welcome back everyone for another part of A Spotlight On. And today we're going to be continuing the conversation on why different people are more affected by HIV. And for this particular interview, we're going to be talking about the impact on gay and bisexual men. And we are very fortunate to be joined by Phil. Phil is a social activist, particular focus on health and sexual health, a writer and a researcher. Phil, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Could you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, so my name is Phil Samba. I work at Prepster, which is an organization that educates and agitates for a drug called PrEP, which is, you take before and after sex that stops you from getting HIV. But we also do a lot of work on health in general in our parent company, the Love Tank. And we do a bunch of stuff on sexual and reproductive health.
Thank you. So in so many different ways, like I see you as someone who contributes a lot, especially in terms of being a key person ensuring that the voices of Black and brown people, especially queer people, are heard and are celebrated as well. Why is that something, do you feel that that's a fair assessment of you, first of all? And why is that something that you do, if you do feel like it's a fair assessment?
I think that's definitely a fair assessment. But I think there are a lot, I want to try and not go into your questions. I don't want to answer any questions that you've done. But there's basically a lot of high rates of HIV amongst queer Black men. And also, there's not a lot of representation of queer Black men when it comes to public health campaigns and stuff like that. So that was part of like kind of getting involved and trying to be a voice, because if we're not listened to, then like how are we supposed to educate or prevent HIV? Educate about HIV or prevent it?
I completely agree. And you mentioned that there are higher rates of HIV amongst queer Black men. And we know generally as well within the UK, there are higher rates amongst gay and bisexual men. Could you explain like why you think that is for our audience listening?
I think a lot of it has to do with stigma. I think HIV, although it's a very different disease to what it was in the 80s or the 90s, it's still stigmatized as being exactly the same. But a lot of people do not have a lot of information about treatment or how it actually is spread or what is even considered a risk. So I think there's this fear of contracting HIV, but not actually knowing that much information. So it's stigma, but also a lack of education.
And how do you think that stigma and a lack of education impact different groups? Because I know there are different groups that are affected by HIV, and especially gay and bisexual men and queer men.
I think that there's a difference. There's like, I feel like when it comes to white in particular, I feel like they may know more information, or they might be to sexual health messaging with the queer spaces that they go to, or like the places that they may feel comfortable. So there's things where like you wouldn't necessarily see Black queer men in HIV campaigns as frequently as you may see white gay men, or they may see certain things as not for them. Like for example, PrEP. Initially with PrEP, even up until maybe this year, a lot of Black men wouldn't consider taking it because they didn't think it was for them.
Thank you for that. And also I think similar for women as well, who some women didn't feel that PrEP was for them either up until quite recently. And it's really important in terms of what you're saying about how messages are sent impacts whether or not we think those messages are for us. And when there is that lack of representation, sometimes we miss those messages, or the messages are just not created for us in mind, which means we're not getting the information that we need.
it's
Yeah.
like a kind of like a one size fits all type of thing, and we're not specifically targeted, I think, a lot of the time. And some things that may work for other groups or other people may not work for Black people in the same way.
And what, maybe talking about some of the work you do, what kind of targeting have you seen works, or what kind of targeting would you like to see being done, whether it's by clinics or other public bodies?
I definitely would love to see more queer Black men or Black queer men in HIV and sexual health in the UK. I mean, worldwide specifically, but in the UK, I feel like there's not many of us, for one. And I feel like when we do get together and we do create campaigns, or if we're writing, or even if it comes into research or the activism, if Black people do things for them, by them, then other Black people will be more responsive to that. Or if there's more information shared by Black people, or more stories being told by Black people, then Black people will connect to that. I think it's kind of similar to what I said about PrEP, in the sense of if there was always this narrative of white gay men, Black gay men wouldn't connect to it. And I think it's kind of like that across the board.
I guess it shows, well, going back to what you said about not one size fits all, but also just because a group might be lumped together as gay and bisexual men, it doesn't mean that there shouldn't be, like, it means that there still needs to be, though, that targeting, because, you know, you're not all the same. We're not all the same, even if there's one label that's given to us.
Yeah, I think particularly in this field, intersectionality is extremely important. So even if we was to do Black people, or if we was to do Black queer men in particular, there are still differences with, let's say, a Black African man in comparison to someone that, let's say, a mixed race guy that was mixed heritage of Caribbean and white. Like, we have completely different experiences. So we have different connections to, let's say, sex or sexual health or health in general. Like, it could be completely different. And I think we need to be as specific as possible when it comes to targeting groups.
And you mentioned a really important word, intersectionality. What is that?
Intersectionality is just how different identities connect. So, for example, not just being like Black, but being Black and male, or being Black and male and gay. So those three identities basically connect. And I think a lot of the time, kind of going off the one size fits all thing, is that intersectionality is not usually considered. It's just, we'll just put this out and then this will hit all of the groups, not realizing or doing that specifically targeted work.
Thank you very much. And it shows, like, when there's an intersectional approach, it means that we're being approached as like whole human beings. And I think, and yeah, I agree, it's important in terms of getting the right targeting and reaching the right groups. Before I ask my final question, is there anything that you want to add?
I just feel that we should allow ourselves to have open and honest conversations with each other about the sex that we have, and about the either STI or HIV prevention tools that we like to use. I think that not having a lot of conversations, or open and honest conversations with each other, kind of continues that stigma, and kind of continues information from not being shared between one another. I feel like a lot of the time, a lot of the sex, because we're not, I mean, when I was in school, I wasn't really taught anything about sexual health. I was taught about sex, and I was taught to use a condom, otherwise a girl would get pregnant. But outside of that, I wasn't taught anything about STIs or HIV transmission. So I think it's just important to educate ourselves first, and then educate other people around us, as well as allowing those people to say whatever they want in connection to sex or sexual health.
Yep, I completely agree. And that having the right information, having the and educating ourselves is so important when it comes to tackling stigma, and then also not internalizing and putting the stigma on ourselves, which I know is sometimes something that people living with HIV can face. So yeah. I completely agree with you. I completely agree. Thank you, Phil. Now, the final question. Every year at camp, there is a theme. And this year, the theme is superheroes. So the question that I had for you is, who is a superhero? Who is a hero to you, and why?
Ooh. I have two superheroes, and I think you know who I'm going to say. My superheroes are Mark Thompson and Ron Lutland. They are my colleagues, my friends, and my mentors. And without them, I wouldn't be within the sexual health sector or have, I guess, progressed as much as I have, or like be in the position I am today without them, or without their guidance and the kind of their mentorship.
Thank you. I did suspect. And they are both amazing human beings. And we actually spoke to Mark earlier on. So he has also been interviewed for the Spotlight series as well. But yeah, I think those are good choices. And it really shows the importance of connecting with people and learning from other people and sharing wisdom.
Especially like I think a lot of the time younger gay men don't really have intergenerational relationships with older gay men, and there's so much that we can learn about our history and about the AIDS epidemic, and just kind of learning what things were like before, or learning what was done for us to live the life that we live today.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point, and I think it really is important to be able to learn from and build on what has been done before. And I think it's really good for that sense of connection as well, especially with like the activists like yourselves, when you're like building and organizing.
Yeah, I was very lucky to come across that, first of all.
Phil, thank you so much for your time, and really helping to like bring light on a topic that is complex, yes, but is really important to talk about. So thank
No
you.
worries. Thank you so much for having me.